Awesome. Hey, everyone. Week 6.
Yeah.
I think it's week 6 or week 7.
About to start week 7. Yeah.
About to start week 7. Yeah. End of week 6. About to start week 7. Wow. Can't believe it's like 2 weeks left.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Welcome, everyone. Let's get started with demos. So should we get Jordan and Fatima maybe go first, and hopefully Shalom can join a little bit later.
Yeah, that works.
Sounds good.
Let me
Awesome.
I'm just pulling it up in VS Code. 1 second.
Yeah.
Hey, Shalom.
Hey, Shalom.
Hey, everyone.
Hey. All right. Are you able to see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, great. So our issue was, as an item, I want my estimated next purchase date to be computed at the time of my purchase recorded in the database, so the app can learn how often I buy different items. And the acceptance criteria is when a purchase is recorded, the estimated number of days until next purchase date should be calculated and recorded in the database. So for this, I'll show the app. So just create a new one. Okay, so then I'll find this here in the database. Okay, so once we check it, a few fields will now like update here in the database. Tacos. So we have days until next purchase date filled in, the last purchase, number of purchase. So kombucha. So I need to check because I just saw both of them were like pulling in 0. I think that was like a fix we just like updated. So I think Fatima, was that? You said that was something that was just resolved, right?
Oh, actually, I think I was thinking about something else, but for this one, is it because it's just a new item?
Yeah.
I think that's why the days until next purchase is 0.
Yeah, you're probably right. Okay, so yeah, if I put last purchase back a couple days and then recheck kombucha, should update. Okay.
Nice.
So I'll pass it off. Fatima can show the code on this then.
All right. Let me prepare my screen. Okay, can you see my screen fine?
Yep.
Got it.
Okay. Oh, let me check. Oh, I need to plug in my. So for this issue, we had to add a new field in add item form. This field right here, days until next purchase. And then in the item component, when the item gets checked, then the days until next purchase gets calculated with the calculate estimate function, and it gets passed in the item purchase interval, the days since purchased, and the number of purchases. And then when the item gets unchecked, then the or before that, when the item is rendered, the state of the item is saved to item backup. So then when the item is unchecked, then the last purchase date and number of purchases and days until purchase values are set to the item, the value of the state that was stored in the item backup, which was the previous state when it was right before being checked. Also, I did a refactoring of the code on a different branch, and I separated out this function, the update last purchase, into two functions based on April's suggestion. So I can show you the code for that right now too. I'm planning on pulling out a separate pull request for that code since it refactors quite a bit of this code here.
Yeah, that makes sense since this is functioning and you're just kind of enhancing that function. So.
Yeah. So on the checkbox input element, it's just the on change.
Okay.
And then the on change, it depending on whether it's checked or not, calls the handle check or the handle uncheck.
Okay.
And then the handle check is the one that updates it with the new values, and then the handle uncheck reverts it back to the backup values.
So the only thing that spots to me on that update is, oh, you do have your set checked to be is still in your handle change. But if it's not checked, it's going to, and this is where you can help me out on this, Jono, like, so it's going to go through this if or this else. Will it also fire that last
This
function
one right
call?
here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It will. Yeah. Because you didn't do any returns in there. Okay. Just double checking. Great.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I like the backup column. I think it makes sense because you want to keep the state in between page refreshes or any stuff. So yeah, this branch totally makes sense.
Oh yeah, and in this branch too, instead of keeping the state in the variable, that item backup variable, it's it's being stored in the database.
Right.
To these three values. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that was a really good call out, Jordan, for picking up on.
Oh yeah.
Kind of after reflection of, wait a minute, like that's really good.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But credit goes to Jonathan because we talked about this in office hours.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
That's all right. However you got there, you got there.
Team effort. Team effort.
Team effort. I mean, we left it pretty open-ended in terms of like moving forward, and I think this like totally makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I imagined myself being at the end of the week of having worked on this and looking at this problem and going, so that's why I kind of gave a push in this could work and it's similar to what you already have.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it looks a lot better too with like that function being separated out to the handle check and the uncheck, because it was a lot going on for that one function already.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, in time, I've kind of found myself when I can, moving away from if else's and either into something more like this where it's distinctly split out, or setting it up so that there's an if statement that returns early with a default function at the end of it. Or, you know, I don't know. For me, if else's, especially when they get really long, start to get a little bit much. So I don't know. I always try to find ways when I can refactor them a little more readable. Personal preference.
Very nice.
Very good work. Nice.
Yeah, great work. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know I mentioned it on my review, but this is an issue that in my from previous experiences and people that have spoken about can trip up the mentees pretty hard sometimes. So
Yeah.
I know they made some adjustments to that function, which is I think helpful as well. But yeah, it can get a little bit like troublesome. So you guys did a really great job.
Yeah, well done.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Mandy Shalom, you're up next.
All right. Shalom, do you want to go first or do you want to show the code?
Actually, I'm having issues with starting up my server, so you can maybe just do the walkthrough and I'll walk through the code.
Oh, sure. Okay. All right, let me get my screen shared. All right, so start issue. So our acceptance criteria was to make it possible to delete an item from the list, especially like, you know, if you stop purchasing something, you don't want to keep seeing it on your list as a suggestion. So we have to be able to delete an item from the shopping list. And we needed to also implement a prompt, like a modal, to confirm the delete because it's a destructive action. So you want to give your user time to cancel it if they need to. And the deletion should cause the record to be deleted from the database. So we added a button here to trigger that deletion. And let's see when we open it up. It opens up this modal. So you can cancel and exit out of it. Or you can hit yes, and then it deletes. Show that here in the database. So this will be coffee. Delete our coffee, and it disappears.
Nice.
Any questions on that bit?
Does like tab controls all work and stuff? Like if you weren't using mouse and you just use the keyboard?
Oh, that's a good question. So we can tab to our delete. We can tab back and forth.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, that does work.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I got kind of bug up my butt about doing some extra accessibility work because I felt like we weren't really meeting the standard previously. And it was like, I want to challenge myself to do better because I do believe in accessible apps. So I'm going to put the work in though.
Yeah, that's
there.
awesome.
Yeah. Are you ready, Shalom? Is your server cooperating?
No, my server was still getting an error, but I mean, I can walk through the code because I don't really need my server running for that. So
Okay, right on. I'll stop sharing my screen for you.
all right. Can everybody see my screen?
Mhm.
Okay. So we created, well, we started with creating this delete items component, which basically displays the button to the screen and handles the delete. So what we did was we had a state where called is open, just to kind of toggle the display of the confirmation. And then we had a function called handle delete that would handle deleting the information from the database. So basically what's happening here is we're going to first display the button, and on click, we're going to change the is open state to true. So basically what it does is that opens the modal. And then we're going to also load this component, which is the modal component that we added as well. And in the modal, it's going to display this text. Are you sure you want to delete? And if so, then we're going to handle that delete. And if not, then we're just going to set the is open to false. That way, when we go to the modal.js, we see here that this modal only displays if open is actually true, if the state of open is true. So if it's not true, it's not going to do anything. But if so, it's going to display what we're passing here as children, which is basically the text in that we're right here. So it's going to display this in a modal and allow the user to either confirm or delete. And we also added this delete button to the items component, so that it's when the item is displayed, it's going to be displayed with all of this information, the form that allows them to check whether it's purchased or not, as well as the item name, and then the delete button right here. And we're passing in this information, like we're passing in the item and the item ID, we're passing in the user token and focus on input into this component so that we can, in this component, we know what item we're deleting. And we can then hit this function that actually handles the delete. It's going to first set the is open to false. That way the portal disappears once they click yes, that they confirm the delete, and then it's going to go into the database and find the correct item to delete and delete that component. And then in terms of accessibility, Mandy did a lot of work with the code on there. I don't know, Mandy, if you want to quickly kind of just walk through that, or.
Yeah, I can cover a little bit. So on line 16, where the use effect starts, that's just listening for an escape key. So if the modal is open, you can hit the escape key and exit, because that's expected behavior for an accessible component. And then, we added some Aria labels. So like on line 36, the Aria label will read out to the user so they know what hitting the yes button is actually going to do for them. I think there is maybe some other Aria labels in item maybe that we updated. Yeah, so April, go back to item. April showed me how to make sure that the screen reader is reading out the actual item name. So on line 50, you're seeing that there, line 52. So I was really curious about how I could, because it was like reading out purchase item. So now it actually read out the item name, which is nice. I think it still could use improvements, but it's way, way, way better than it was. Yeah, and then handling the focus trap is really difficult because that portal element from React, the way I understood it is it sort of allows you to hook into the DOM, because React has this virtual DOM with all of its nodes. And then there's also the actual DOM underneath that. So figuring out a way to hook into that so that you can step outside of React's rendering is difficult. So we ended up not going that route and landing and using a library to manage the focus capture. So when the modal is open, the focus switches to that instead of staying in the elements that are behind the overlay. So I learned that, yeah, it's a beast to manage that. And I have a newfound respect for people that are good at it.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things that was challenging about this week's issue was definitely working on the accessibility. And I mean, Mandy did a great job going through that, especially using the pop-up because it's rendering in different places in the portal. That's something I forgot to go through. I think in the
It's in the index, I think in public.
oh, there it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have it rendering not in the root div, but in this portal. So kind of, figuring out how to get it to read things in the order that we wanted it to read. That was quite tricky, but yeah, but good job, Mandy.
Yeah, you did an awesome job implementing the portal, and April was an amazing guide. So thank you for that.
Hey, well done to
Very
everyone.
nice.
That's awesome.
Very nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, portals are really great. They do become kind of their own, like you say, their own DOM. So they remove themselves out of the component tree, but they're considered a first-class component. So you can still bubble functions up to them and interact, but the focus is the one spot where it gets a little bit more cumbersome, I guess.
Yeah, understand.
There's clearly an answer because it's there, but it's much more involved.
Yeah, figuring out like, yeah, what's really rendered and where is it rendered? When is it rendered?
Yeah, yeah.
But I don't know if anyone has any questions or stop sharing.
No, I think this is good, and that gave me a chance to see your updated code. So yay, really nice job.
Yeah, well done both guys. That's awesome. There was some like kind of tough tickets there, especially like with
Yeah.
accessibility as well. Like initially I was like, oh, delete button, that should be pretty straightforward. But then once you like bring in all this like focus trap stuff, I was like, wow, that's a whole nother kind of worms I did not even think about. So well done.
And the nice thing is that you set your modal up as its own component that receives children. So now if you choose to use a modal somewhere else in the application, you'll have that base modal to base your work off of. So that's
that's
an extra
actually
benefit.
Yeah, that's something Shalom and I discussed, that it would be really nice because we have like these pretty basic alert in other places, and we thought, well, if we do it in a way that's reusable, we can take the alerts out later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also know I talked to Jordan a little bit during office hours in regards to, rather than having a pop-up or a modal or an alert that the user then has to make an action on to close it out. One option that you can do is to just render like a right underneath the add item like input, just a paragraph or a tag of some kind that conditionally renders, so that it'll show when they've added a new item, and it'll give them confirmation underneath there without having to pop something up that the user has to then interact with. So just a suggestion and option.
Like a tooltip kind of deal.
I think they're called Toast.
Those are the toast, and you can do that with the portal actually if you wanted to.
Wait, what is
but now
toast?
I was thinking more just along the lines of, it's literally just text that displays underneath the input, and then but it displays conditionally based off of once the confirmation comes back, and you can set it on a set timeout too, so that it just displays for a number of seconds and then fades away. However you want to handle it, but yeah, it's kind of a nice simple way to give the information without requiring the user to act afterwards.
That's a good idea.
Awesome. Well, I think that's it for the demos. So we can move straight into the retro. It's gonna be the last retro, right? Do we have one right at the end?
I think there's one right at the last.
Right at the end. Okay, never mind. So second to last retro. It's gonna be the same format as last week. So let me actually share my screen. That would help, wouldn't it? Cool. All right. So yeah, so I have a retro 3 board, which I'll drop in the chat. And what I'm going to suggest this time is for everyone. Before I do that, let's quickly review last week's retro. So these are the things that we could have improved that I pulled from that column from last week's, which is maybe the team can meet up at the end of the week to discuss work before merging, and then working more in public can help keep teams aware of each other's progress. Let's just start with the last one. How did we feel this kind of last 2 weeks or last week? Did you feel like we're working public more?
I definitely try to DM less and post like at least in the Slack channel. Not as much as in GitHub as I probably could have, except for like today. I posted a lot in GitHub.
Yeah, I mean, I liked all the conversations in GitHub. I think that was good.
Yeah, I was gonna say on my end, like I think I definitely failed. Like I was doing a lot of like DMs and like didn't really post anything on like the public Slack. So definitely something to keep working on my side. But yeah, I would agree with like the GitHub comments and kind of like pasting thoughts in there too in the PR. So that was one positive.
The nice thing about using GitHub too is that you can actually refer directly to the code that you're like have a question about. Like you can put the comment directly on that line of code or that section of code, and it gives a nice clean reference without having to like type out, in that file where we do that thing. Could we maybe do this? Where if you just go right to the line of code, hey, right here, could we do this? So
yeah, that's a good point.
Advantage to GitHub conversations.
I think something like I forget that I could do is like check out the other group's issue or the other pair's issue. Because I think sometimes it'd be interesting to kind of just see their progress like while they're doing it, because I don't look at it until the very end when the pull request review is up. So I think I might try doing that next time, just like checking it out more in the beginning of the week.
Yeah, and maybe that could be like a thing where like both pairs kind of communicate when the PR is up, and like maybe if there's like parts to focus on as well, that could be something they could kind of Slack. Shalom, do you have any thoughts on that either? In the working more in public?
Yeah, I think personally I did a slightly better job than the previous week, but it's hard like to not kind of get into the DM mode. So definitely better than last week, but I think just like as Jordan said, I think I could also do better with more less DMs and more public conversations.
Yeah.
And I think also to add to that with what Fatima said as well, I think that's a good point to bring up, because I also kind of do the same where I go through the other group's PR at the end of the week, but it would be nice to kind of, check into it earlier so I kind of know what they're working on as well and how it's going to all work together once we merge and things like that. So that's definitely something I would like to improve on my end as well.
Yeah, especially since you guys are working so closely in the same files. It's kind of nice to like last week when you were both working in the item, like just having that awareness, if not coordinating with the other teams to make those merges a little more smooth, can be useful.
Right, definitely.
Yeah. And I think like these next coming weeks, because it's like mainly focused around the design issue, like you might feel like just DMing each other to coordinate is fine, but I would like strongly suggest like sharing resources or like inspiration stuff in the public channel just to like, so we can keep in touch, like to see the progress, because I think that's really exciting for like mentors to see like how it's coming along. But then yeah, also like if you have any questions as well, we can always answer it. Cool. And then the other just review is maybe the team can meet up at the end of the week to discuss work before merging. I don't think we merged the PRs this time around. I'm not sure if this is something we still want to keep in mind for this upcoming week. And if anyone has any strong thoughts on this.
Personally, I feel like meeting up at the beginning of the week to kind of go through what we plan on working on. I think that's a really great idea. I'm not so sure of whether it's necessary to meet up at the end, since we also do meet up here to kind of go over what we worked on. So kind of what I think.
Nice.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And we kind of covered it on Monday. This is
Right.
kind of segueing to the next thing, which we can table if you're not ready yet. But I just wanted to shout out Fatima for taking care of our merge last week. She took the initiative to get it ready, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think like our meetings that we have at the beginning of the week are really useful, because we kind of just at the beginning we tie up any like loose ends that we had from the previous week. So it's pretty helpful.
Yeah. Perfect. Cool. Well, I just changed that one note just to reword that. So this is where we're going to do things a little bit differently. We have the same columns, but I'll let everyone just add their own cards in, and then I'll give everyone like 7 minutes to do that, and then we can spend the next like 7 to 8 minutes just talking through any points that are really interesting. And as we talk through these, I'll do like a roundtable. So we can start off with like Mandy, who can talk about a point, any card on the board, and then she can pass it off to Jordan, so on and so forth. And we can do just as many rounds as we can in the time we have. So I'll stop talking. We'll let everyone just add. Everyone should have access to this board. Let me know if you don't, and just go ahead and start adding tickets. And yeah, I'll just mute, and we'll come back in, say 5 minutes.
And just one question, we add to all the columns, not just the highlights, right?
Yeah, you can add. Yep.
Okay. Cool.
Exactly. Yeah.
And put our name on it, or no?
It'll automatically say added by.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. Okay, I'm starting to see less notes being added, so I think that might be a good place to stop. Unless anyone has anything else that want to add. Oh, nice. So another card come through. Cool. Well, I'll share my screen again. Feel free to keep adding. And we can start kind of the discussion. So yeah, just feel free to take like one of these cards and we can just chat about it. If it's a shout out, you could definitely take a shout out as well. Like that's totally fine. How about we get Mandy to start and then we can go from there.
Sure. Yeah, starting with like last week, beginning of this week, really, rather. Fatima took the initiative to get our merge together, and that was super helpful because there was quite a bit of crossover in some of the files. And Shalom, she learned how to implement that portals pattern like on the fly and did it really quickly. So I'm really proud of her for that. And April. I'm just going to shout out everyone, but especially April this week because she was super, super helpful in guiding us on making our app more accessible. And super appreciate it because it's such a complex topic. It's nice to have somebody lead you through it. Should I pass it to someone?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm going to pass it to Shalom.
Yeah, so I just want to start out with thanking both April and Jonathan for all your feedback, not just this week, but in general thus far, because for me, going back and reading through those comments really makes me think through the code a bit more and better approaches. And it's always a learning experience. So thank you for that, because it's something that I definitely learn from. And also Mandy, I mean, she did a really great job with working through the issues with accessibility and just being kind of our database expert thus far. So she handles a lot of the back end work with whether it's the delete button or some of the things we've worked through thus far. So definitely great job on that and working through Firebase and all that. So yeah.
Awesome. Feel free to pass it on.
Oh, I forgot I'm supposed to pass it on. I'll pass it on. Pass it on to Fatima.
Yeah, so shout out to Jordan for doing a great job for the issue this week. When we first started out trying to figure out what to do, it was pretty confusing, but Jordan, like, he came up with the solution for the item backup, and then during the office hours, he was asking really great questions that kind of led to the solution for storing the data in the database. So great job on that. And then also thank you to the mentors, especially during the code reviews. Really appreciate your time that you put into doing the code reviews, and you give very helpful feedback and suggestions.
Awesome. Oh, that's so nice.
I know.
Too nice.
Jordan?
Sure. Yeah, and thanks for that, Fatima. So I wanted to shout out Fatima for doing like great work on that last like refactor that she went through. She took that on like all on her own, after getting the comments, and yeah, just really like, I know it took a lot of effort and like cleaned up the code a lot. So really appreciate that. Jonathan, you want me to pass it on to like mentors as well, or keep it in the? Okay, yeah, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, +1 to all the shout outs that everyone said so far. Like, especially the mental one. No, I'm kidding. Both areas have been like crushing it. So the one that I want to talk about is like the demos are feeling really smooth. I feel like the last few demos have just been like really awesome, going through the like criteria, answering questions on the spot as well, and being able to demo like more than what you potentially like more than what the ticket itself had, right? Like you kind of went through like this focus trap code, like this accessibility code a little bit, which is like way more than what this issue does. So I think that's just awesome. And everyone's doing so great there. And April.
Yeah, definitely seconding, thirding all of the shout outs. You guys have been killing it in a lot of ways. But in particular, I'm going to call out the separate branches that you guys have been using to really explore the code. It's such a great tool to be able to just branch off the work that you have that's working and just explore and see what you can come up with, knowing that you've already got the work that you've done before secured on another branch. And it's a really great habit and pattern to get into, to give you the freedom to really dive deep into something. And so seeing you guys do that has been really cool. It's been great. All right, it's back around to Mandy, right?
Yeah, I think we probably have time for one more round before we
All
need
right.
to get into issues. But yeah, let's do that.
One more round of highlights.
Yeah, or
Was
just
that?
wherever on the board you put something you want to call out.
Yeah.
Oh, I think it's actually kind of funny. Under what went well. I put that I thought there were more public comments and less TMs, but my perception's different from other people, so who's noticing that? And I mean, I also kind of consider like committing more in my own head, being more sharing, what I'm doing more, not putting up, like waiting until I think something is perfect has been a really big problem for me. So doing more commits is also communication.
Yes.
And I think it's been better. And we did more asynchronous work actually. Shalom and I did this week, and it went really well. I think our trust level is like high. We kind of anticipate what each other is going to do. So that went really well, I think. I'm going to pass it back to Shalom. Sorry, I did last one.
Yeah, I was actually going to say the same thing. I think this week we had a good combination of both synchronous and asynchronous work. So we were able to meet up a few times briefly and then do some more of the work asynchronously as well. So I thought that was good.
Yeah, that's awesome. Did you? Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I know both like Mandy put in like fewer DMs, and then you put in where you can improve less DMs. Is that something that is there like a disconnect there, or is that just like something overall that you think we can improve on?
Right. I think that was more in comparison to how it was starting out. I feel like the first few weeks there was just a lot more going on in the public threads than this week, but it's definitely an improvement from the previous week for sure. So I just meant it in comparison to the earlier weeks. I think slightly less public thread usage. I feel.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. Cool. Sorry, putting you in a spot. I'll let you pass it on.
Sure, I'll pass it on to Jordan.
All right. So I think and one thing that went well this week was Fatima and I we really thought through like all the logic and functionality like on the issue we had. Kind of like before we started coding, I would say during and then after. Like sometimes it's hard for me to like put things into words. So like we really like discussed a lot on like, when should we be calculating different things like uncheck, check, when we refresh or whatever, and then so we kind of like jotted down a lot more like sub criteria and like notes in our issue. And then anything that was like left like kind of we weren't too sure about or like needed confirmation, that's what we brought to office hours. So I think that was like a good approach of it, like write down questions and kind of like think through like different testing and like, different functionality that could be impacted for each issue. And I'll pass it to Fatima.
Something that went well for Jordan and I this week was also we were working a little bit more asynchronously too. We did a mix of asynchronous and synchronous. But for working mostly asynchronous, we actually got pretty good progress done during the week. And we were I guess making sure that we were clear on the direction of where we were going also. So there was never really any confusion of what we were going to do, which was good.
That's awesome.
And then I think something else that went well was also I think Mandy and Shalom's work. I think how they made the modal so that it's reusable, so that we have the option to use it for other things. I think that was really great too.
Cool. Do you want to pass on to me or April?
Yeah, I'll pass it on to you, Jonathan.
Okay. I'm gonna take a wake and improve, and that was me. I dropped the ball in office hours, so that was my bad for sending out a poll so late. I do want to say, if you do have questions, feel free to wait for office hours, but I would say like you can also ask the questions in the Slack channel as well, especially if the questions or the office hours is like towards the latter half of the week. It's just nice to have the questions answered early on and get you unblocked, so you can get like a pull request out earlier rather than having to wait for so long. But yeah, that's my bad on dropping the ball there. So apologies to all. And I'll let April round us out.
All right. Yeah, I guess I'll also kind of, I guess, piggyback off of that in the response to, or the fact of like, the PRs got to a reviewable state later in the week again. So it just makes it a little bit more challenging for you all, because then, I feel like I came through on Saturday morning with a lot of, notes that while they weren't needed and the work that you did was fine to push through without, if something had been a little more, urgent or necessary, it didn't give you a lot of time to kind of handle that. So, yeah, just trying to get that work up closer to, Wednesday, Thursday, to a place where it can start to get reviewed is, or even if it's in draft form and you still want eyes on it, making sure you ping us to let us know. Because I tend not to jump in on a draft knowing that there's a lot of changes that could happen, and I don't want to go in and start commenting on something that maybe you already have a branch and you've started making that adjustment and on your own.
Awesome. I added that as an action item, and also the questions as well. I think that's just something to keep in mind for the next couple of weeks. And that is it for retro. Thank you so much, everyone, for doing that. That's great. I'm going to pass on to April.
Fantastic. All right, so we have our issues this week. So ordinarily, this next 2 weeks would have one singular issue, which is in regards to the design for, let me share my screen here, the design planning as well as the implementation for it. And so because we had kind of to make an adjustment towards the beginning of the cohort, we do have one additional item that will need to get addressed and worked on, and as well as the design factor. So we'll start with issue number 12, which is, as a user, I want to view a list of my shopping list items in order of how soon I am likely to need to buy each of them again, so that it's clear what I need to buy soon. So the possible item states are going to be that you need to buy it soon, which is 7 days or fewer, kind of soon, which is between 7 and 30 days, and not so soon, which is more than 30 days. There's also the fourth state of inactive, which is when there's only one purchase in the database, or the purchase is really out of date. For example, 2 times what the estimated purchase date was. Your acceptance criteria for this issue is that the items will be listed with visually distinct from each other to show what status they're in. If they're soon, kind of soon, not soon, or inactive. they should be sorted by the estimated number of days until the next purchase, so that the items that need to be bought the soonest will be at the top, leading down to the inactive at the bottom. Items with the same number of estimated days until the next purchase should be sorted alphabetically, and items in different states should be described distinctly when read by a screen reader. So if we look at the wireframe for that, you can see that they chose to do a gray color on their checkbox for an item that is inactive, and then we have not so soon, soon, and different coloration variations. You can make that as distinct or subtle as you want, but you do want to make sure that, especially from an accessibility standpoint, that color isn't the only indicator that you have. And so one way that you can do that is with Aria Labels, and setting up Aria Labels that will read out the status of that item to state that it is needs to be purchased soon, or kind of soon, or however you want to word that within the Aria label, so that when the screen reader comes through it, it can deliver that information to the user. The criteria for the item being inactive has tripped people up in the past, so they've kind of reworded it to be more clear. But the gist is that the item is inactive if the time that has elapsed since the last purchase is twice what it was estimated the last time it was purchased. So if an item was estimated to be purchased within 7 days and it's been 14 days, or I guess in that case, you could even, 14 days and they still haven't purchased it, you can put it as an inactive. And then, so they gave you the example of 14 days. If it's been 28 days or longer, then you can make it inactive. They've also over-engineered the solution by breaking the list into separate groups. It can be achievable in a single list where the visual treatment is different based on what category the item falls into. And then make sure that you don't use just color, but that you also include the Aria labels. And you've got this. All right, so then the third, or the final issue for the project actually extends beyond just this week and into next week. And that is that as a user, I want the app to look professional and welcoming. And this is actually a really, really fun part, because this is where you guys get to come together and create your vision as a team on what you want to do with this. It's very self-directed. There are some ideas and things to get you started here in regards to like the design process. So you're going to make decisions together as a team to implement your vision and kind of organize how best you want to proceed, and you're free to take whatever approach you want to see fit. This is the time if you wanted to add in a CSS library or something along those lines, like just as long as you as a group agree to one path and you follow through with that, then you get to make those choices. You get to definitely lean on us if you have questions or if there's things that are unclear or how you think you should proceed. And then the basic design process that you're going to want to keep in mind as you go through this is kind of making a decision on what tone you want to go for, what you're trying to convey. So you want to come up with 3 to 5 words that best capture how you want your users to perceive your application. Either, it could be fun, clean, ironic, business-like, just words that kind of give a mood, so to speak. And then with that, you'll create a mood board, or you can recreate a mood board, which helps everybody get on the same page in terms of the direction. There is a link here that kind of links off to an example of what a mood board would look like. We can go ahead, and I didn't open that one up. It's, essentially it's a how-to, but you can see here where you kind of get a sense of the general mood of what a website with this kind of design aesthetic in mind would be. And so you'll want to kind of think about what that would be for yours. Fundamental elements need to be designed, such as typography, colors, your iconography and imagery. You can use cartoons, you can use real life images, like, wherever you want to go with that, as well as, again, deciding whether you want to do your CSS from scratch or if you want to use a framework. There's pros and cons to both. If you choose to use a framework, evaluate your options to make sure you pick one that will suit your needs. consider documentation, ease of integration, built with accessibility in mind, as well as an active community. And quality frameworks that you might consider would be listed here that you can check out if you wanted to. And beyond that, we just need to kind of decide how you guys want to tackle issue 12, whether you want to do it in more of a mob style, or if you want a team to take it on, and then how to incorporate finishing off item 12 as well as beginning on your design.
I wonder, like, if we could tackle it in a mob, like in our meeting tomorrow. What would your thoughts be on that?
Yeah, I've been kind of thinking about that idea, just because although I've done a lot of back-end work, your issue this week was heavily back-end. So I feel like we're primed to work together on that.
Yeah, that would be my vote, but up to you guys too.
I also think it would be a good idea to kind of go through it together as well.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Great. So obviously 12 needs to be finished before you can really deep dive into getting your design work going. So the sooner that you guys can get that up and both self-reviewed by you, but then, you know, have us mentors take a look at it, the sooner you guys can get going on the actual coding part of your design. But you can start having discussions and coming up with ideas and, you know, figuring out what your tone or your mood is going to be right away, so that each of you can independently kind of come back together and bring in, like, if you decide that these are the words that we feel like would describe what we want our app to feel like, and then everybody can go through and find things that can maybe be added to the mood board, or you know, so there's things that you can do in tandem to issue 12 to make sure that you don't get behind on your design process either.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The only other call out I want to make, I know we have the issue 12, but from previous cohorts, or like from what I've heard from previous cohorts, a lot of time has been spent on the design, and the design has been absolutely beautiful, but that's taken up most of the 2 weeks. And then you have like a few days to try and push as much code as you can. And it's very stressful, and generally doesn't, like, you kind of feel sad because it doesn't like look at like the design that you kind of envisioned. So it suggests like try and like, whenever you finish issue 12, like try and get some code in as soon as possible, like make those decisions really quickly. Like even if it's just like the CSS framework that you're going to use, and just kind of have something demoable in terms of like design work, like the next weekly sync, just so you have like some sort of progress, because it's, yeah, you don't want to leave it all to the last minute.
I know a lot of this is opinion, but from your point of view, have you seen a particular framework be less problematic than others? More successful?
I think it depends on the people, like the collabs, right? Like I would say Tailwind and Bootstrap are probably the most well known in my mind. I have never used Chakra Material. I've used and haven't used Semantic UI either. I'm not sure about you, April.
I'm going to be honest, I haven't used any of these frameworks. I'm a big proponent of CSS. I do like Sass because then like the nesting and all of that makes it just really nice. And I recently started or did another project and I thought, oh, I'll just do straight CSS, and very quickly realized that I'm far too used to being able to have that structure in place for me to go back to anything else. So yeah, I haven't. I do know of Material and Tailwind. Obviously I know of Bootstrap as well. I think Bootstrap's pretty heavy though, but
yeah,
yeah, if you're familiar with a framework or you think the documentation makes sense to you as a team, you can definitely work on incorporating one if you feel like it. But if your experience and your knowledge lies more in just, you know, going through traditional CSS, you know, that may be better. It's my preference. I mean, if I start a new project, like I one day I might try one of those frameworks, but I haven't yet.
yeah. I think like out of this list, like Tailwind would be the one that I would choose, just because like it's pretty simple in terms of like how fast you can style something because you can just add classes. Obviously, the trade-offs are you have to kind of search through the Tailwind docs to figure out like what style you want, and then also you're kind of bloating your HTML class list. It can get really long, so if you're not used to that look, then it's not nice. But yeah,
There's also a lot of excitement around Tailwind right now, so there's a good
Yeah.
community. There's a lot of community resources, which is always really helpful.
yeah.
Mm.
Just a quick question, like in the industry, is there a preference to use it in comparison to using frameworks versus using CSS, like you mentioned, April? Do you feel like companies or when working on apps, there's a preference for one over the other, or is it kind of frowned upon to use so much of all the frameworks? Or
I don't have a ton of experience, but my gut and what I do know says that it depends. It really, each project will kind of put itself together based on its own needs. And then grow or shrink from there. Like if you bring in a framework and it gets to be too much, taking it out can be a challenge too. So I think once a decision is made, it's usually followed through on, unless it gets really bad. But yeah, I think it just depends. A startup community or company that needs to hit the ground running and get out there and get something is probably going to be more lean heavily more towards a framework and just get it done. A company that has a little bit more leeway or time, maybe they don't, maybe they do. I don't know. I know, like I say, we do use the SCSS SAS. I don't know if it's a library framework language. I'm not 100% sure
like
what it's officially called.
Preprocessor. Yeah.
Preprocessor. Yeah. Which is nice, but that is more how you format the CSS, as well as it does offer some additional functionalities such as mix-ins, where you can set CSS styling and then add it in throughout your code as a mix-in. So if you have standard things that you reuse and stuff, so it has advantages to it, but in the end, it's just another way to utilize CSS.
Yeah, I think if a company gets large enough, like I'm sure 1Password has it, but like Shopify has its own design system where you can just pull in components and they're already styled, and they've already kind of like done that. So you're not really using a framework. I guess you're using your company's framework almost to pull in those style components. But yeah, I'd say +1 to what you said with like startups, probably using like some sort of framework to get started with.
Yeah, we do a mix where I work. Like our admin apps are all material, but on the front end, it's all custom.
Yeah.
When our customers see.
Any other questions?
So just in terms of like for next week's meeting, we want to have obviously issue 12 done, and then decide on a framework and like have some, I guess like a draft PR with some code for the last issue, right?
Yeah, I think if you're going to go with a framework, you should have that installed, and whatever changes you need to make within the application to fit with that framework done for sure. If you choose not to use a framework, then I would say just kind of having your base styling together, like where your body margins and your HTML, your standard H2 sizes, that kind of your basic code that you want to have in place, your typography, what you're going to use, and all of those kind of your base CSS for sure should probably be in place.
Okay, and then from like teams in the past, has it been like mob approach style for like the styling as well, or kind of like asynchronous? Like what's the best way to kind of all contribute to like styling? Because
it's a good question.
Yeah.
I think it's like really up to the team to decide there. Generally with styling, like the base styles, you might just want to have one person like own the PR, maybe you can mob pair on it. Otherwise you'll get a bunch of merge conflicts if everyone's trying to manage their own like base style PR. But once you move into components and you're kind of like styling per component, then you can kind of split up the work again on pairs or however you kind of want to decide. I don't. Do we have actual pairings? I don't think we do have pairings.
I don't think we do now. It's kind of
okay.
a little bit, it's a little more freeform in the sense
Yeah.
that, you know, taking all of the skills of collaborations you've gained over the last 6 weeks and applying them into the last 2 weeks within you as a team, and kind of, yeah, delegating and deciding how that's going to work for you.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
tomorrow night when we meet up, we can kind of just talk about where our strengths, our existing strengths are,
Mhm.
and start making decisions that are in line with that. So we're not, you know, trying to build a bridge as we're crossing it too much.
Yeah, and if you think that you guys might be interested in doing a framework, it's worth going through and taking a look at the documentation at those options. And then you can,
Yeah.
when you come together to talk, you can kind of at least have a reference point for what those frameworks are, what they offer, and if it's a fit.
Cool. Any other questions? Do you have everything you need to get started?
We'll make it happen.
All right. Awesome.
All right, as
to
always,
hear
reach
it.
out if you need help. Graham's going to be
Yes.
posting up office hours poll at some point here in the beginning of the week, and we'll chat with you in Slack. And
Yeah.
Sounds good. Thanks so much.
Awesome.
all
Thanks,
right,
everyone.
bye.
Thank you.
Have
Have a
Bye.
good week.